Well, for what is Tamworth, here I am out in the middle of what's colloquially referred to in Australia as butt-fuck nowhere, to a place called Puyallaway, where I'm going to talk to a guy about solar power. It's dry out here, I guess you could say. It's brown. There's a few trees. I mean, consider this landscape prior to the white man coming out here with his Bible and his fucking chainsaw. My sense is that when you see a large tree, that one there is not particularly large, there's some bigger ones. So there's little clump of trees here. I don't know how old these trees are, but let's say, for example, before the white fella got here with his chainsaws and his Bible, this landscape would have effectively been an open forest. Thousands and thousands of hectares, hundreds of thousands, millions of hectares of land forested. And you can just see the wide open plains. I mean, there's still some trees here. There's a couple there, look. But so I think what Tamworth needs is a billion trees. A billion trees for Tamworth. How do we say that in a nice marketing sort of way? A billion trees for Tamworth. I mean, you could say a trillion trees for Tamworth, but I don't think you're going to get a trillion trees in Tamworth Shire. I just don't think they're going to fit. That report that came out recently said that there's room for another, I think, 3 trillion trees to be planted on the planet. Well, you can definitely put a bunch of them out here. I mean, look at that. It's just vacant open land. And so what I was thinking this morning was, as I was getting my notes together, I bought this notepad where I'd been writing notes on it, and I'm sort of tearing off all the pages that I don't need, and I'm thinking that paper contains carbon. And then I'm in this drought-stricken land, the dam's down to 20%, and I go to the loo in the morning, and in the morning I flush the loo, which contains, 7 or 8 litres of water, plus all of that nice nitrogen and phosphorus and all the micro minerals that are existent in a human's daily waste. And I'm thinking, if you combine that with the paper, you've basically got water, carbon, nitrogen and phosphorus and micronutrients, and that sounds like the basis for putting it in the ground to basically kick off a good healthy soil community around the base of a newly planted tree. And I'm thinking that if we've got a population of 60,000 people in Tamworth taking a dump every day, or maybe emissions. Not sure how you do that, but then maybe that doesn't actually matter if you're growing a forest, because the trees will just assimilate the heavy metals, because they're not planning on actually growing a food crop out of them. So there's the thought. Much waste nutrient in our waste, human waste stream. There's so much wasted paper, which is probably going into landfill, where it will eventually degrade in an anaerobic environment and release methane, the greenhouse gas. I mean, just to replant a forest, 1 billion trees in Tamworth, I don't know how many trees you'd get out of, I don't know how many trees you'd be able to plant using the wastewater from Tamworth, but the point is, it's got to be in the tens of millions, surely. And once you've got enough trees planted, it helps to re-establish a hydrological cycle, which means that you can use even less water to keep the tree growth growing. And if you plant ecological trees, which is to say a mix of species that fosters native habitat, then you end up improving your biological biodiversity, which is pretty much rooted. If you look around here, not a lot of biological diversity out there. I can see grass and cows, that's 2 species. So you help to re-establish your biodiversity as well. And I mean, it's just ludicrous in this dry place that we should still be using flush toilets. I mean, I flushed the toilet without guilt today because I kind of had to. Didn't really want to leave that, you know, sitting around, given that I'm in a Airbnb rental property. Probably lose my bond. But the point is that the system hasn't yet accommodated that. They're still manufacturing these big houses with a traditional sewer system, which was invented in in Ireland in 1870 or something, in a really wet country. It's just ludicrous. It just comes back to this incapacity of the system to change. And why is that? Is because change means that somebody gets inconvenienced. So the people that manufacture toilets get inconvenienced. If we were to say we were to stop overnight building houses with flush toilets and instead use dry toilets, it's the people who are currently making a ton of money selling flush toilets are the ones that will be inconvenienced. And you can say, oh, well, what about all the people that are in the dry toilet business? They're going to be going great. Well, yeah, they will be going great if the system goes off. But they're not going great right now because nobody's buying dry toilets. They don't have the money to lobby to keep something in place. And so Machiavelli actually referred to this. There's a quote in that book, The Prince by Machiavelli. I don't remember it verbatim, but it basically says exactly the same thing. Change is incredibly difficult because the incumbents are cashed up, whereas the change makers don't have the resources. So that's part of it. And that comes down to people politically lobbying in order to protect their immediate commercial interests. Look at this truck thing here. See this big truck? It's got, I think it's called hay. Is that hay or that's hay? So that is a massive, great big truck, like powered by diesel, that is taking grass hay grass out to the starving cattle in this drought-stricken place. Now that makes sense economically, i.e., the cost of the fuel and the cost of the hay, subtracted from the cost of, selling the cow. But I don't think that makes a lot of sense ecologically. Mind you, there isn't a lot in Tamworth that makes sense ecologically. Show you some more landscape. Just look at that. Flat, flat, flat. Flat, flat, flat. Flat, flat, flat. Anyway, oh look, there's a stand of trees over there. So, I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, that's probably what the place looked like before the chainsaws came in. And now it's just like denuded and open land. Some cows here, look. Every now and then you see one of these huge dry paddocks, and in the middle of the paddock, for the birds, in the middle of the paddock is a single tree with about 20 cows sitting under it. So they knock down all the trees except for one, because the cows like to sit under the tree. But of course what they've done is they've completely destroyed the hydrological cycle out here, because the trees had a role. I mean, the trees are basically water pumps. They move water from the ground and into the air. And some trees and other vegetation actually produce compounds that act as cloud nucleating agents, which is to say these are the molecules, for example, that the water vapor condenses onto in order to form droplets which form the clouds, which then rain. And so by cutting down the trees, not only do you get rid of the water pump that puts the water up there, you also get rid of the nucleating agent that helps the water fall back down again. And so they're wondering why there's a drought here. And I'm not. I mean, quite apart from the fact that the climate has shifted from all of the carbon emissions and the carbon built up in the atmosphere, part of which has come from 2 centuries of chopping down and burning trees, not to mention all of the methane from the cows and the diesel fuel from the trucks. So I'm just thinking that there's room for 1 billion trees in Tamworth, and they've got the water, and they've got the carbon, they've got the nitrogen, and they've got the phosphorus that they need to kick that